Hello and welcome to the Sacred Truth Channel. I'm Stelio Zandamela, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Before we begin, don't forget to follow the channel and activate the notification bell so we can learn together about the mysteries of the Bible, sacred stories, and the teachings of the Lord. I also want you to share your experience. Leave a word in the comments or tell a story you've lived on the Lord's path. Here, every testimony is welcome. Every experience is valuable, and every reflection strengthens our faith. Today, we're going to explore 5 Bible mysteries that you've probably never heard of. Ancient secrets that have crossed generations and continue to intrigue scholars, theologians, and curious minds alike. Get ready to dive into fascinating stories, sacred enigmas, and revelations that will touch both your mind and heart. Mystery 1: The Nephilim. When it comes to Bible mysteries, one of the first names that sparks curiosity and fascination is the Nephilim. But who were they? How did they come about? And why do they remain an enigma to this day? To understand this mystery, we need to go back to the origins of the Bible, to the book of Genesis, where they are mentioned briefly, but with a significant impact, and explore everything that ancient texts, traditions, and scholars have to tell us. In the early chapters of Genesis, we find a passage that has intrigued scholars, theologians, and the curious for centuries. The text says, "In those days, there were giants on the earth, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men." Genesis 6:4. This phrase, simple at first glance, hides a complexity that challenges human understanding. Who are these sons of God? And who are these daughters of men? And most importantly, who were the Nephilim? The name Nephilim comes from ancient Hebrew, and although there are several interpretations, one of the most accepted is that it means the fallen, but fallen in what sense? Some scholars suggest they were fallen angels, beings who transcended the human plane, mingling with humanity and leaving an extraordinary lineage. Others believe they were literal giants, men of incredible strength and stature, whose presence caused fear and admiration at the time. And, of course, some say they symbolize spiritual forces and conflicts between the divine and the human, an ancient metaphor for the imbalance between what is morally right and what is corrupted. Now imagine for a moment you are living in the time before the flood, surrounded by these giant creatures. What would your perception of life be like? How would your faith hold up in the presence of beings so different, so powerful, so supernatural? It is precisely at this point that the mystery gains strength, because the Bible does not go into details. It does not say what happened to each of them, nor does it fully explain their origin or final fate. It is a veil of mystery that has spanned millennia. According to some ancient traditions, the Nephilim left traces of their existence in the world. Legends say they built enormous cities, structures impossible for that era, and influenced ancient cultures with their power. Some archaeologists and historians point out that certain ruins and megalithic finds might be linked to these stories, though there is no definitive proof. But are we looking at a myth, or did they really exist? This is the question that continues to fascinate scholars and curious minds. Another point of debate is the purpose of their existence. Why would God allow the presence of beings so powerful and, in some sense, corrupted? Some interpretations suggest the Nephilim were a test for humanity, a way to challenge faith, morality, and human resilience in the face of the supernatural. Others believe their existence demonstrates the complexity of the divine plan, something we still cannot fully understand. And here I want you to reflect. Do you believe there are forces beyond what we see and understand that influence our history and lives. Additionally, the Nephilim are also mentioned in apocryphal texts, such as the Book of Enoch, which is not part of the official Bible canon but is extremely valuable for understanding ancient traditions. In this book, the Nephilim are described as the children of fallen angels and human women, and it is said that their actions caused great corruption on earth. One of the reasons for the flood sent by God, this narrative adds more layers to the mystery. If they were destroyed by the flood, as some traditions claim, what legacy did they leave? Did they have descendants, or were their influences purely symbolic? It is impossible to talk about the Nephilim without mentioning the enormous debates that have arisen over the centuries. Many scholars have tried to interpret these passages in light of science, archaeology, and theology. Some see the Nephilim as symbolic myths, representing the moral decay of humanity before the flood. Others believe they are real historical records, forgotten or hidden over time, perhaps to preserve mysteries that humans were not ready to understand. And here I want to ask you directly, what do you think? Were the Nephilim literal giants, a supernatural lineage of powerful beings, or just ancient metaphors meant to teach spiritual lessons? Share your opinion in the comments and tell a reflection or experience related to your faith. To conclude this first mystery, let's think about the impact of the Nephilim on the biblical narrative and our spiritual understanding. They represent forces beyond human control, challenging our comprehension and making us question the limits of faith and history. Studying and reflecting on them is not just about learning a myth or a legend, but about understanding how the divine and human intersect and confront each other in sacred stories. And remember, by exploring mysteries like this, we are not only seeking knowledge, but also strengthening our faith, curiosity, and connection with the Lord, learning together to interpret the signs and stories that have been left for us. Mystery 2, Melchizedek. Among the great mysteries of the Bible, few names spark as much curiosity as Melchizedek. He appears briefly, almost like a fleeting whisper, yet his impact and significance transcend the chapters in which he is mentioned. Many scholars, theologians, and Bible readers ask, who was this man really? What was his role? And why did God place him in the narrative in such an enigmatic way? Melchizedek is first mentioned in the book of Genesis when Abraham returns from a victorious battle. He is described as the king of Salem and priest of the Most High God, offering bread and wine to Abraham and blessing him. This scene is short, but it contains elements that continue to intrigue scholars. The first question that arises is, why is Melchizedek presented as both priest and king? Something unusual in the biblical tradition? The answer is not simple and has sparked debates that span centuries. Looking at the Old Testament, we see that the roles of priest and king are usually separate. Priests descend from the line of Levi, while kings come from the line of Judah. Melchizedek, however, has no recorded genealogy. He appears out of nowhere, already with spiritual and political authority. This lack of origin is one of the elements that make him a unique and mysterious figure, perhaps symbolizing a direct connection between the divine and the human, between the spiritual and the earthly. Another fascinating point is the offering of bread and wine. For us today, this seems familiar, reminiscent of the Eucharist, but at that time it was both a gesture of hospitality and sacredness. Some scholars believe that Melchizedek was a type of foreshadowing of Christ, showing in advance Jesus' spiritual role as priest and mediator between God and humanity. When we think about this, we realize that the Bible contains layers and connections that interweave, in subtle and extraordinary ways. But the mystery does not end there. Melchizedek also challenges us to reflect on spiritual authority and power. He blesses Abraham, one of the most important figures in the biblical narrative, indicating that his spiritual power is recognized by God. This leads us to think, how much spiritual influence can someone have without the world noticing? How many important figures in history were silent yet fundamental to the development of faith and humanity? And here, I want you to reflect with me. Have you ever encountered people in your life who quietly changed the course of something important for you without seeking attention? The Bible is full of these subtle references that teach us about humility, power, and discernment. Moreover, Melchizedek is mentioned again in the book of Psalms and in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. In Hebrews 7, he is described as a priest forever, without beginning or end of days, which is interpreted as a symbol of eternity and spiritual perfection. This reinforces the idea that his presence in the Bible is not only historical but also spiritual, offering lessons and mysteries that transcend time. Another intriguing aspect is his city, Salem, which some scholars associate with Jerusalem. If this is true, Melchizedek could be considered the first priest of the city that would become the spiritual and political center of the entire Jewish tradition. This adds a fascinating historical layer to his mystery. He is not just a spiritual figure, but also a landmark in biblical history. And as with every good mystery, Melchizedek also sparks debates about interpretation. Some theologians claim he was a historical man, someone who truly existed and was influential, though his lineage and deeds were only lightly recorded. Others argue that he is a symbolic figure, created to convey lessons about faith, justice, and sacredness. For us seeking to learn and reflect, perhaps the most important thing is not just knowing who he was, but understanding what his story teaches us about spirituality, leadership, and the relationship between the divine and the human. Now, I want to ask you a question. When you think of Melchizedek, do you believe he was a real man who walked the earth with Abraham? Or do you think he represents a spiritual idea? A bridge between God and humanity? Share your answer in the comments, reflect, and if you have any personal experiences related to faith and spirituality, tell us about them. Here on Sacred Truth, every testimony matters, and every story strengthens our community. To close this second mystery, let's reflect on the message of Melchizedek. True spiritual authority does not depend on lineage, wealth, or human recognition, but on connection with the divine, humility, and discernment. He teaches us that faith can manifest in ways that are silent, discreet yet extraordinarily powerful. If you enjoyed this mystery, stay tuned, because we still have 3 more to reveal, each more fascinating and mysterious than the last. Remember to subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and share this video with friends who also want to uncover the secrets of the Bible. Together, we will explore each mystery, reflect on every story, and strengthen our faith in the Lord. Mystery 3, the Ark of the Covenant. Among the most fascinating mysteries of the Bible, none arouses as much curiosity and awe as the Ark of the Covenant, a symbol of God's presence among the people of Israel. It is mentioned with reverence, yet many of its secrets remain hidden to this day. Who created the Ark? What was its true purpose? Where is it now? These are questions that have intrigued scholars, theologians, and curious minds for generations. The Ark was built following precise instructions given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. It was made of acacia wood, overlaid with gold inside and out, with a lid called the mercy seat, where 2 golden cherubim faced each other, their wings stretched over the lid. This detail is not merely aesthetic, It symbolizes the closeness of God to his people, the place where he would meet and receive the sacrifices and requests of the Israelites. Imagine the significance of such an object in that era. A sacred chest carrying not just items, but the very presence of God himself. Inside the ark were kept the tablets of the Ten Commandments, given to Moses by the Lord. These tablets were not just laws, they were a covenant, a living agreement between God and his people. Additionally, according to some traditions, the ark also contained manna and Aaron's rod, symbols of divine provision and priestly authority. Every object within it had deep meaning, and together they represented God's plan for the world and for the human heart. But if the ark was so important, why did it disappear? After centuries of history, used in wars, ceremonies, and sacred transport, the Ark of the Covenant simply vanishes from the biblical narrative. Some say it was hidden by the priests of Jerusalem before the Babylonian invasion. Others claim it was taken to secret locations, protected by divine power or secret societies. Even today, archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters search for its whereabouts without success. This disappearance heightens the mystery even more. Is it lost forever? Or does it await discovery? The Ark's mystery is also surrounded by legends of supernatural power. Some ancient accounts speak of its ability to topple armies, destroy cities, and protect its people, but also to bring death to those who touched it without permission. Imagine the awe and fear inspired by such an object. It is not merely a relic, but a symbol of divine power and the respect we must have for God's laws. Historically, the ark was carried across the desert, accompanied the Israelites in battles, and rested in Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. Every step of its journey is filled with stories and events that demonstrate divine intervention in human history. Yet even with all this documentation, huge gaps remain, and that is precisely where the fascination lies. The Ark of the Covenant is not just a historical object, but a portal to spiritual questions and deep reflections on faith, obedience, and God's presence. And when you hear about the Ark of the Covenant, can you imagine its grandeur? Can you feel the spiritual weight of an object that carried God's presence and is still shrouded in mystery today? Perhaps we will never know all the details, but reflecting on its existence helps us realize that some things in the world and in faith go beyond human understanding, inviting us to trust, seek, and believe. Also consider this. If you could find the Ark of the Covenant today, would you treat it as a historical treasure, an archaeological artifact, or as something sacred carrying the presence of God? This reflection helps us understand the respect and reverence we should have not only for sacred objects, but for all wisdom and teachings passed down to us. To conclude this mystery, remember, the Ark of the Covenant is not just an ancient chest, but an eternal symbol of the connection between the divine and humanity. It teaches us about faith, respect, responsibility, and the unseen power that guides our lives. By studying and reflecting on it, we strengthen our understanding of God's plan and our own spiritual journey. And as always, I want to hear your opinion. Do you believe the Ark of the Covenant still exists somewhere, hidden or protected, or do you think it is lost forever? Leave your answer in the comments, share your reflections, and tell a story or experience from your walk with the Lord. Here at Sacred Truth, every comment is a light, every story an inspiration, and together we continue our journey of learning and faith. Mystery 4, the Lost Books of the Bible. The Bible as we know it today is only part of a vast collection of ancient texts that were written, read, and debated over centuries. However, many books are mentioned in Scripture or cited in ancient writings that are not part of the official canon. These are the so-called lost books of the Bible, and they carry mysteries, stories, and teachings that remain hidden, sparking curiosity and fascination even today. Before exploring the books themselves, let us reflect on their importance. Each book of the Bible was chosen based on complex criteria, including authenticity, theological coherence, and acceptance by the community. Yet not all ancient texts passed this selection. Some were lost, forgotten, or deliberately excluded. This raises an intriguing question. What wisdom, stories, and teachings might have been lost in the process? Among the most well-known of these books are the Book of Enoch, the Jubilees, the Book of Giants, the Book of Jasher, and many other apocryphal texts. Each presents narratives that expand or explain biblical stories in unique ways. For example, the Book of Enoch details the fallen angels and the Nephilim, providing information that Genesis mentions only briefly. It explores what happened to these beings, how they influenced humanity, and the consequences of their actions. The Book of Jubilees, on the other hand, retells the history of Genesis and Exodus, organizing events in cycles of 49-year jubilees and adding details about laws, rituals, and genealogies. The Book of Jasher offers alternative versions of the stories of Abraham, Jacob, and other biblical figures, including accounts of battles, miracles, and interactions with the divine. Each of these books provides a different perspective on history and faith, offering layers of understanding not available in the canonical text. Now think with me. If these books had remained fully accessible, how different would our understanding of the Bible and biblical history be? What secrets might have been revealed about figures like Abraham, Moses, or the prophets? How would this affect our faith and our view of God's plan? It is precisely this sense of mystery and possibility that makes these books so fascinating to scholars and curious minds alike. Moreover, many of these texts were intentionally excluded or forgotten, and this too invites reflection. Why were some books preserved while others were not? The answer involves political, religious, and social issues of the time. Some books were considered inconsistent with official theology or might challenge the dominant religious authority. Others contained narratives that could be misinterpreted or create confusion. Here we see the power of narrative and information, which can be used to both teach and control. Even lost, these books continue to inspire researchers, theologians, and curious minds. Ancient manuscripts discovered in caves and forgotten libraries, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls, reveal fragments of these texts and allow us to imagine what was lost. Each discovery is a window into an ancient world, where stories and teachings were passed down orally and in writing before being consolidated into what we now call the Bible. Now imagine this. You find one of these ancient books, intact, with stories that the official Bible does not tell. How would you react? Would you read it with faith, curiosity, or even questioning? This reflection leads us to think about our relationship with knowledge and tradition. How open are we to discovering new truths without losing our faith? One of the most fascinating aspects of these books is how they expand our view of the divine. They show that the Bible is not merely a collection of stories, but a doorway to multiple interpretations, layers of wisdom, and human experiences in the face of the supernatural. Some books detail angels, others prophecies, and others still teach laws, ethics, and morality in ways that complement or deepen what we already know. Each lost fragment is an opportunity to learn, reflect, and grow spiritually. Here is another reflection. By exploring the lost books, we realize that faith is not only following official texts but also seeking to understand, question, and connect with the divine message in a personal and profound way. Each lost book, each fragment, invites us to reflect on the purpose of our lives, the presence of God, and the impact of our choices on the world around us. To conclude this mystery, remember, even though many books have been lost, the essence of God's message remains, and our journey of faith continues. Yet by learning about the lost books, we open space for more questions, more learning, and deeper connection with the Lord. If you have any experience, story, or reflection related to discovering new biblical teachings, share it in the comments. Here at Sacred Truth, every word, every reflection, every testimony strengthens us and brings us closer to sacred knowledge. Mystery 5, the Book of Revelation. When we talk about mysteries of the Bible, none awakens as much curiosity, speculation, and debate as the Book of Revelation, also known as the Revelation of John. This is the last book of the New Testament, a text full of symbolism, visions, and prophecies that, since its creation, has intrigued and fascinated believers, scholars, and curious minds throughout history. Revelation begins with John receiving a vision while he is exiled on the island of Patmos. He describes the presence of the glorified Christ, surrounded by 7 stars and 7 lampstands, and receives instructions to write letters to the 7 churches of Asia Minor. Every detail of this introduction is already filled with symbolism. The 7 stars represent the angels of the churches, and the lampstands symbolize the light of God present in each community of faith. But beyond the introduction, it is within the visions themselves that the mystery becomes even deeper and more intriguing. Throughout the book, John describes 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls of wrath, each bringing judgments, catastrophes, and events that challenge the imagination. The interpretation of these symbols has generated debate for centuries. Some scholars defend a literal reading, believing they are prophecies of future events. Others see Revelation as an allegorical text representing the struggle between good and evil, between true faith and the corrupt forces of the world. One of the most enigmatic elements in Revelation is the figure of the 144,000 who are sealed, described as those who are protected and consecrated to God. Who are they? Are they specific people, chosen souls, or symbols of faithfulness and spirituality? The answer is not simple, and different traditions offer different interpretations. But the most important thing is to understand that these numbers and symbols are not meant merely to confuse us, but to make us reflect on the importance of faith, perseverance, and dedication to the path of the Lord. Another fascinating symbol is the beast, described as a being that represents evil, oppression, and corruption. The beast and its followers possess powers that challenge human understanding, and their role in Revelation is to demonstrate the constant struggle between divine and evil forces. When we study these images, we realize that the book is not only about future events, but also about spiritual conflicts that occur in our daily lives, challenging us to choose between faith and doubt, truth and deception, light and darkness. And we cannot forget the New Jerusalem, the heavenly city promised at the end of Revelation. John describes it with streets of gold, walls of jasper, and gates of pearls, representing perfection, justice, and the full presence of the divine. This ending is not just a poetic detail, but a promise of hope and redemption, reminding us that despite the difficulties and mysteries of life, there is a greater plan that transcends suffering and uncertainty. But have you ever wondered why John wrote Revelation in such a symbolic and mysterious way? The answer may lie in the very purpose of the book. It was written to challenge, instruct, and inspire. Instead of providing easy answers, it invites us to reflect deeply on our faith, our actions, and our relationship with the divine. Every symbol, every vision, every number carries multiple levels of interpretation, offering endless opportunities for learning and reflection. Furthermore, Revelation also challenges us to think about the history of humanity. Throughout the centuries, many people have tried to connect its prophecies with historical events, wars, epidemics, political crises, and social upheavals. Some even attempted to predict the end of the world based on their interpretations, while others found inspiration and hope in its messages of justice and redemption. This duality between warning and promise is one of the reasons why Revelation remains so fascinating even today. Now I want you to reflect with me. How many times in life have you faced situations that seemed challenging, confusing, or even impossible to overcome? Revelation reminds us that even in the midst of darkness there is a divine plan, and that perseverance, faith, and courage can guide us through the most difficult moments. It teaches us that life's greatest mysteries are also opportunities for spiritual growth. And of course, we cannot fail to mention the angels, dragons, seals, trumpets, and bowls, each carrying deep meaning. Some represent judgment, others protection, and still others challenges to be faced with faith. Every image is a metaphor, a lesson, or an invitation to reflection. By exploring every detail, we realize that Revelation is not only about future prophecies, but about our spiritual journey, our challenges, and the choices we make every day. And to conclude this final mystery, I want you to carry with you a few reflections. Revelation teaches us about perseverance, faith, hope, and discernment. It shows us that even when facing great mysteries and challenges, we can find guidance and inspiration in the Word of God. Most importantly, it reminds us that faith is a continuous journey filled with questions, discoveries, and spiritual growth. And now I want to hear from you. Which symbol from Revelation intrigues you the most? Which vision do you consider the most mysterious or powerful? Leave your answer in the comments, share your reflections, and if you have any personal experience related to your faith or the mysteries of the Bible, tell us about it. Here at Sacred Truth, every comment, every story, and every reflection strengthens and inspires us to continue exploring together the secrets of the Word of the Lord. Remember, the mysteries of the Bible do not exist only to confuse or challenge us, but to guide us, teach us, and connect us with the divine. Every reading, every study, every reflection brings us closer to the wisdom and understanding that God wishes to share. And with that, we conclude our series of 5 biblical mysteries you probably never heard about, with stories, symbols, and secrets that span centuries and continue to inspire us today.